for us to have, will be very good for us to have the opportunity to talk. Let me just for the sake of those of us here in this room. Okay. Am I spotlight or not yet? Am I? Yes. Anthony is saying yes. Okay. And I'm going to say a bit more about why it's important that we talk tonight among ourselves. But also, I've been preceded by two of our board members here in Nottingham who have given very beautiful and full talks on this topic of Milarepa, and I thought that was a very good ground for me to introduce this next phase of what we're going to be doing on Sangha nights, in particular, with many of our activities here at the Nottingham Buddhist Center in general. But I want just to say, the project that we are promoting at the moment is called The Nature of Mind. So it's a project in conjunction between Adhisthana, which is one of our main retreat centers here in the UK, the London Buddhist Center, which is one of the longest standing centers of Triratna, Buddhist centers, and a number of centers, in the UK, among which we are. We've been invited to take part of this project. So it's a project. It's a current project. It's very very relevant to all of us in Triratna and beyond. The idea is that the project is called, which is I'm still intrigued by the meaning of this phrase, but it's called real outreach. Yeah? So it's trying to go, I suppose it's trying to go beyond our the normal places that we encounter, the normal places that we meet people. And I'm sure we all agree that now more than ever, the Dharma is needed. Yeah? So it's very important that we do that. We promote the Dharma with as many resources as we can. But I just want to say also that this, the Nature of Mind is a project that has been pertinent to the Buddhist tradition for millennia. Yeah? So this is a project of the Buddha, trying to understand the nature of mind. And one of the outstanding figures in that process of exploring the nature of mind is Milarepa. Yeah, and I'm going to say a bit more about that in a moment. So mind is something very elusive, is ineffable. In a way you can start saying that the nature of mind is ineffable. Yeah, it's difficult to grasp. It's certainly not conceptual. Yeah? So it's not cognitive. Yeah? I have a couple of things I want to show you. In a moment I'm going to ask Zach to show one of them, the image, if you can be ready. So in many ways, it's difficult to communicate what the nature of mind is. Yeah? So language is limited when we're trying to engage in this attempt of describing the nature of mind. But we should strive in that effort, yeah? Because in the process of trying to communicate, something is transmitted. Yeah? That is not necessarily the concept, but it might be a glimpse of the experience. Yeah? So we are aiming at that, an experience, a full experience of something, yeah? Something beyond, if you want. So it's like if you can show, the image, the picture. Yeah? You'll see that on your screens in a moment. So this is a cognitive bias codex. Yeah? It's very difficult for you probably to read, the letters, the small print there. Thank you, Zach. That's a good attempt of trying to make it more clear. So at the center of that, we have a brain, a human brain. Yeah? And around that human brain, we have several lines. Yeah? Each one of those lines is the title or the name of a bias that has been recognized and studied. So a human bias is a cognitive bias. So what is a bias? Bias is basically a distortion that we bring into our experience, usually through interpretation. So biases is many times what prevents us from understanding more deeply what the nature of mind is. Yeah, we can stop sharing. If you want a more detail, more detail of those biases, you can just Google cognitive biases Codex, and you get it. You get it. And but I wanted to show you that because two things. We in the West, we tend to associate the mind strongly with concepts and with the brain. Yeah, those two things, concepts and the brain. And in Buddhism, we are aiming at understanding the mind beyond those very fixed and narrow ideas. So concepts are important. We shouldn't disregard them. We shouldn't be dismissive of intellectual understandings. But Sangha, the founder of Triratna, famously say, we need to find in a spiritual life, we need to find emotional equivalence to our intellectual understandings. So most of the time, if we look deeply into our experience, most of the time, the way we look at the world, the opinions that we hold, the views that we invest ourselves in are driven by emotion. There's a very strong emotional component. So it's important for us when we are trying to grow and develop that we also develop certain level of emotional intelligence. So that's something very important that we need to look into through this project. So just want to say something about the first event in this project, the Nature of Mind, the project that we are starting today in a way. So officially it starts this Friday evening. So we're going to have the opportunity to see another member, Nyana Bacha, who is based in London, who's going to be talking about an interview that he did with a psychiatrist called Ian McGilchrist. And this is a very interesting person. The conversation between them is available online. So if you go to the Nature of Mind website in Adhisthana, I think we're going to share one link with you. I think in that link you'll probably find those conversations. There is a very interesting and affable conversation between Nyana Bacha and Ian McGilchrist. But something that I wanted to highlight from that is the point or the topic that Ian McGilchrist is exploring. This is that of consciousness. So this is a psychiatrist who has been trained scientifically, talking about consciousness. And something that struck me about what he says there is that he strongly believes that consciousness in a way precedes matter. So matter is an expression of consciousness. So it's a bit counterintuitive to the education that we have received in the West, that we have acquired materialistic understanding of reality. So we trust what is tangible, what we can hold with our senses. Was that? Okay. Yes. So, and something else that Ian McGilchrist gets into is the whole area of emptiness. You probably have heard this word, emptiness. Even he mentions the area of shunyata. And that's very closely related to this topic of the nature of mind. I wanted to mention this thing about the brain, the association of the mind with the brain, because something that he says in that interview, and I really recommend you to watch it, and maybe if you have the time this Friday, look at what Nyanavacha has to say about that, is that we think that consciousness is associated with the brain, but there are beings, other conscious beings like plants, because Kusala was talking about my garden, and we were talking a bit more about that we know now that they have consciousness, they have a level of consciousness, but they don't have neurons, they don't have the kind of brains that we have in our, the kind of cells that we have in our brains. So consciousness is still a mystery. What is consciousness? In a way, I like this. I really like an image that you used tonight in the meditation of this sort of a sitting upright, sort of in line with something, higher. And in a way, we have a limited sense of consciousness, but we can tie that up with higher levels of consciousness through our experience, especially through communication. So Kusaladevi and Bodhinaya gave two very beautiful talks in the last 2 weeks. Kusaladevi's talk was entitled Son of the Yogi's Joy, and Bodhinaya talked about how to live and die without regret. So, and also I recommend, if you haven't seen them, if you haven't been with us in the last 2 weeks, they are available in our YouTube channel. And something that we were looking through the history or the story of Milarepa is Milarepa's relationships with others, with his teacher Marpa, for example, or with his disciples that are depicted here in this picture. So a relationship with other human beings. Also Milarepa is usually portrayed, as Kusaladevi pointed in her talk, with his hand, one of his hands, like trying to listen to something. So, and what he's trying to listen is to the whispers of the Dakinis. There's a figure at the front of the picture there, which is this sort of a sky dancer, full of energy. And what Milarepa is trying to listen is to the whispers of these beings that belong to another level of consciousness. So it's that kind of tied in our consciousness with something that is higher. It could be another human being who is more developed, or it could be opening ourselves up to another forces in the universe. Something that Kusaladevi mentioned there is this whole area of Mahamudra. And the way Kusaladevi talked about it is the direct realization of the nature of the mind. Mahamudra can be translated as a great sign. So there are signs that we respond to. We all are here tonight because we have a glimpse of something in our lives. We have seen something. Seeing literally as a visual experience, or seeing something as in a realization. And there were many different stories. I had a long list of things that I wanted to share, but I'm not going to have time tonight. But something that I wanted to say is that that I really wanted to recover, using in a way one of those many powers of our minds. I really like in the story of the Buddha had, according to the records, the Buddha had many different powers, psychic powers. But two of the powers that I really I feel impressed with the Buddha is the power of being able to remember. The Buddha was able to remember very clearly. And one of his main disciples, Ananda, who passed on by telling the stories, passed on many of his teachings, had a very good memory as well. And the other power is the power of communication from the Buddha. The power of, it said that there are around 80,000 different teachings, in Buddhism. I don't know, I haven't counted them, but and that's what has been preserved from the tradition, because many things have disappeared historically. No everything has been kept, has been recorded. But the Buddha had this wonderful capacity of communicating his insight in a way that was relevant and effective for the person that was listening to. And that's a beautiful power. But I wanted to say is that one of the stories that Kusala Devi was referring to in her talk was that of transforming fear into an opportunity, to opening up to beauty. And we had some people in that evening talking about, facing fear in the middle of the night, and then that experience transforming into something like a threshold, into something beautiful. Yeah. Facing fear and transforming that energy, that emotional energy, into something else. And in Bodhinaya's talk, what I wanted to bring back from Bodhinaya's talk, Bodhinaya mentioned a number of times during the talk these verses from the Dhammapada. Experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. And there are two examples in the Dhammapada of a mind that is pure or a mind that is contaminated, and what happens with that. But it's that idea that mind creates the world that we inhabit. So when we are facing difficulty, we usually are looking at the conditions outside of our experience, around us. We try to identify the difficulty outside. Rarely we stop and look at the content of our mental states. What is that we are bringing? What is that we are adding to our experience? Are we making our experience more difficult than it needs to be? That's a good question, maybe, to explore in the groups later on. And something else that I wanted to bring, Bodhinaya really told the story of Milarepa in a very beautiful way, as a sort of a storyteller, as a good storyteller that he is. And there were two things about the story of Milarepa that struck me, and I always think about this in terms of Milarepa, that Milarepa didn't have an evil motivation when he learned black magic. He did it out of love for his mother. And that's a very interesting thing about that story. So in a way, Milarepa's intention, though it was obviously to take revenge, in his relatives, there was something pure in that desire. Something that his mother put it very, very bluntly, that either you learn dark arts and take revenge, or I take my life. So that fear of losing his mother is the main motivation for him to engage with that process. And I think in my reflections around the story of Milarepa, I think that's what Marpa sees, his teacher sees. He sees that there is something very pure still in Milarepa. Obviously, he needs to purify his karma. And that's the other thing that Bodhinaya brought very beautifully into his talk, that of actions have consequences. So if you add evil deeds, you're going to suffer the consequences of that, even if your motivation is mixed. And I want to say, yes, so something very important as well, this communication of the Dharma. I think what I'm going to do now is just introduce this little clip that we're going to see and listen to in a moment. That comes in a way is inspired by what Kusala Devi say in her talk about this communication of the Dharma. So it's not, as I said before, it's not conceptual, it's not just words. We are trying to evoke an experience. And Kusala Devi talked a lot about songs. So how Milarepa used songs to be able to touch, in a way, to open the hearts of the people that were listening to him. So what we are going to see now and listen to is one of Milarepa's songs. It's called the Meeting and Parting Song. It's a very beautiful song, and I'm going to do a couple of reflections about that song, and then I'll talk a bit more about the project of mine, and we'll finish and go into the groups. But this song comes from the closing of Windhorse Evolution. It's a project that I took part on for 7.5 years when I moved to the UK. I was living in Cambridge and working in a warehouse in Cambridge with other Buddhists from all around the world. So it was a very international community, full of energy. Very interesting project. So this clip that you're going to see is the last day of us in that warehouse with all the racks has been dismantled. We are around the stupa. At the center of this warehouse was a very beautiful stupa made by the same artist that produced this rupa here, Rupa Darshan. He made a stupa that you're going to see in the clip. And there's a friend of mine, Arta Sidi, who does the same job that I do here in Nottingham. He does it in Cambridge. And he's singing. He's a choir director. And he's singing this song. And the three lines that I want to emphasize of this song, maybe we can watch a couple of minutes of this video. Zach, please. Is Milarepa repeats these three lines over and over in the song. He says, inspired by the Dharma, may we soon meet again in prosperity and boom.
In the immense blue sky roll on the sun and moon. Their courses mark the change of time. Blue sky, I wish you health and fortune. For I, the moon and sun, am leaving to visit the four continents for pleasure. On the mountain peak is a great rock, round which oft the vulture circles, the King of birds. Their meeting and their parting mark the change of time. Dear rock, be well and healthy, for I, the vulture, now will fly away into the vast space for pleasure. May lightnings never strike you. May I not be caught by snares, inspired by the Dharma. May we soon meet again in prosperity and good.
That's a 6 minutes clip, and we're not going to be able to listen to the whole thing tonight. But you can either look at the song, you can find the song online as well, the song of meeting and parting, or you can look at that clip if you type Winghorse, song of meeting and parting, it will come up in your search. I just want to say something, this is a bit of aspiration, a very personal thing, I recently spent the Christmas holidays with my son, who I haven't seen for 2.5 years. And it was interesting, the last day when I say goodbye to him on the 30th of December, and every time that I say goodbye to my son, I'm in tears. It's very sad for me to say goodbye. But this time, it wasn't like that. It was a bit different. And it was surprising for me. I was remembering this song. I have sung this song to my son in the past, when we have met. But I wasn't quite sure what my emotional experience was. I think part of me was a bit numb. Yeah. And it was very interesting. I was here in the building. I came back to the building, and the rest of the guys, I live in a community upstairs with 4 other guys, but the rest of the guys weren't here when I arrived. They started to come back gradually. And then I think a week later, we had our community night, and I started talking to Zach and Gareth, and I started to, put into words my experience. And the following morning, the sadness came. I sort of realized fully the sadness of being my son. And later on, I had a conversation with Kusala Devi and Paraga, and it was more than sadness. It was sort of a grieving, for my son. So that sense of, it is sort of a holding those 2 aspects of my experience. Something is the strength, knowing the strength of the connection with my son, the kind of love that I experience towards my son is something that I don't experience towards anybody else, and I'm not ashamed to say that, I'm not saying that it's better or worse, but it's unique. It's different. It's different to any kind of love that I feel. I feel a very strong sense of love for, my friends, but it's not the same. Yeah? But there is a strength in the connection with my son that fills me with confidence. And yet, there's grieving as well in my experience. Yeah? So for me, that's indicative of the complexity of human consciousness. So I'm not just an idea, a belief, a principle. It's much more than that. I can say much more about that, but I just wanted to bring that. I feel like there's an aspiration in me to be bigger, in relation to that connection, and many connections in my life. I have many relatives around the world that I'm not in contact, with. And at the same time, there is something deeper, but very human, and maybe just borrowing from what Kusala Devi said, full of color and full of life, that keeps coming through. And always searching ways to be affirmed, and I strongly believe that the Dharma is strongly affirming life, but it's affirming that deep potential, that deep capacity that we all have to transcend, to go beyond. I must confess that I prepared the whole thing tonight was around the shepherd's search of mind. I said that I haven't said anything about that. I'm not going to say anything about that now, because we are going into the groups. But I just wanted to signpost a couple of things. Part of this, the Nature of Mind project, we're going to have this input, from all the members and personalities who have studied in different fields of knowledge, the mind, the human mind. Yeah. So I highly recommend you to look at the website. And those of you who are here, if you haven't picked one of these flyers, I recommend you to pick it up in the way out. So there are some important dates. But as well as we are going to have this input, for example, this Friday is Jnana Vacha with Ian McGilchrist. We're going to have weeks of meditation in the next 7 or 8 months. So this Monday, the 7th of February, is going to start a week of meditation, a master class on Monday with Maitreya Bandha, and then every day we're going to have sessions of meditation. So that's going to be from 7 to 8:30 a.m. We're free to join. It's not compulsory for anybody. This is completely voluntary. But in some of these weeks, we are going to have a practice night here on a Wednesday for Sangha nights. So at the end of March, we're going to have Gareth is going to be leading a practice night here in connection with the nature of mind. So we're going to be signposting many of these events throughout the calendar that we have. And please look also at our website. We have a page dedicated to events related to the nature of mind. Upcoming events are at the end of February. We have Artabandhu is going to be talking about dreams. So we're going to have Sangha night dedicated to that, and then Artaban is going to offer a day dedicated to that. I think it's in March. I don't remember the date right now. And then also we have Paraga doing a talk on the 9th of March on near-death experiences. So we're going to be looking at that as well. I think that's enough. I really wanted to finish around now. So we have about 25 minutes in the groups. How are you doing with the groups back then? We are ready? Okay. Good. So we'll come back around 25 past, and then we'll close the evening. Yeah. Great. That's it. Oh. Okay. So you need to redo the groups online.
Just need to change.
No. Yeah. I thought maybe we can 2 groups or 1 group. What do you think? Yeah. Here. Okay. Can you hear me online? Yeah. Good, let me just close this window again. Wow, that was a very engaging exploration for us here in the Shrine Room. I hope you had the same in the groups online. And that's it. It's officially 9:30, so it's time to say goodbye. Yeah, I hope really that it was a good discussion. And please keep an eye on the website. We'll be updating the Nature of Mind page. And if you have the time this Friday, tune in to see Nyana Bacha reflecting on his interview with Ian McGilchrist. So we can say goodbye now. If you want to unmute yourself.
Bye. I'll be there next week.
Bye. Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you next week. Ta-ra.
Tra.